When a dash cam captures a huge explosion in a city like Ashdod, Israel, and it's being attributed to a new wave of strikes, well, we're in for a deep dive that's anything but ordinary today. Our mission really is to try and cut through the sheer volume of reports, official statements, analyses that have been flooding in. We want to help you become truly well informed on what is a really rapidly evolving situation. This recent, very fast escalation of the Israel-Iran conflict.
Exactly. And building on that, our goal is precisely to sift through all these different sources. We want to help you understand not just what is happening, on the ground and in the diplomatic circles, but also why it matters and what the immediate and maybe the potential longer-term implications are for global stability. And this deep dive, it's built directly from current news reports, official statements, expert analysis, so you get the most comprehensive picture possible.
Okay, so with that global context set, let's zoom right in on the immediate catalysts here, the initial strikes and those powerful counterattacks.
Right.
We saw significant initial strikes from both the U.S. and Israel. Donald Trump claimed U.S. attacks actually obliterated key Iranian nuclear sites, including Fordo. That's a strong word.
It is a very strong claim.
And it wasn't just the U.S., right? Israeli military officials stated that 20 Israeli Air Force jets struck military targets in Kermanshah. We're talking missile storage, satellite, radar sites, and also a surface-to-air missile launcher near Tehran.
Quite a list.
Yeah, and the Israeli military also attacked 6 Iranian airports. They reportedly destroyed, 15 fighter jets and helicopters, and damaged runways, other infrastructure, apparently using remotely piloted aircraft, drones. So, given the sheer scale and, I guess, the specificity described in these reports, what does this tell us? What about the strategic objectives behind these initial multi-pronged attacks?
Well, what's truly fascinating here is the almost surgical nature of the targeting that's being described by U.S. and Israeli sources, especially those claims of damage to Fordo. I mean, IAEA Chief Grossi even stated the U.S. attack likely caused very significant damage there.
Okay.
So this level of precision, it suggests a strategic effort not just to, degrade Iran's general military capabilities, but specifically to target its nuclear infrastructure and its key strategic assets. It really signals a focused intent to maybe roll back or at least severely impede Iran's nuclear ambitions and its long-range missile capabilities.
Right. And as we know, any action of that magnitude, well, it's going to invite a forceful response.
Yeah.
And Iran didn't wait long, did they? They launched a new wave of retaliatory strikes, including missiles aimed at Israel. And that's where we get that really vivid dashcam footage from Ashdod showing that massive explosion.
Very visual.
Missiles were also seen flying over Jerusalem. Reports said they hit the Lachish area. Approximately 15 missiles launched, apparently, with shrapnel reported after interception. Then Iran's Revolutionary Guards, they escalated their rhetoric, stating they were changing tactics, targeting areas from north to south now, including Tel Aviv and Haifa, with drones and missiles.
So a broader scope threatened?
Exactly. And meanwhile, Iranian state media reported Israel was attacking targets in central Tehran with, quote, unprecedented intensity. Explosions heard in Tehran and Karaj. The speed and the visibility of this immediate back-and-forth response is really striking. What does such a rapid escalation suggest about the current volatility, on the ground for everyone involved?
Well, it clearly shows a breakdown of, let's say, conventional deterrence. It's an incredibly high-stakes, unpredictable situation. Both sides seem willing to absorb and immediately return fire, and that drastically shortens response times and, frankly, elevates the risk of miscalculation quite significantly.
Right.
And, beyond the military targets, we also have to consider the devastating human cost. There are claims in Israeli media that 17 Iranian nuclear scientists have been killed so far, including a senior nuclear scientist, Ithar Tabatabai-Kamsha, and his wife, in a strike on a Tehran apartment. An Iranian news agency did confirm their deaths.
And this isn't the first time we've heard about scientists being targeted, is it?
No, exactly. Israel had previously confirmed the assassination of 10 Iranian nuclear scientists in separate incidents. So these alleged targeted killings, it isn't just about military impact. It suggests maybe a strategy of decapitation, you could call it, aiming to dismantle Iran's nuclear program from its intellectual core. That raises profound questions about, international norms of engagement in modern warfare. And as for the broader casualties, Israeli authorities reported at least 25 killed and hundreds injured in Israel from the Iranian missile attacks. While in Iran, their health ministry reported 430 killed and over 3,500 wounded from the Israeli assaults. These aren't just statistics. I mean, they represent immense human suffering and loss, a stark reminder of the true cost of this escalating conflict.
Absolutely. And as these military exchanges intensified, the conflict, well, it quickly began sending shockwaves far beyond the battlefield. It's forcing European leaders and other global powers to confront the very real risk of a wider conflagration. You see European leaders actively calling for calm amidst these fears of escalation, but they're walking a fine line, aren't they?
Yeah.
Neither condemning nor really endorsing the strike.
It's a difficult balancing act.
We saw that joint statement from the UK, Germany, and France emphasizing Iran must never get a nuclear weapon, calling for negotiations, urging Iran not to retaliate.
Yeah.
The UK government confirmed it had a heads up about the strikes, but wasn't involved. Their armed forces are now on high alert for drone swarms.
Precautionary measures.
Right. There was even an emergency COBRA meeting in the UK that's their top-level crisis committee. And there are upcoming EU foreign ministers meetings and a NATO summit discussing potential Article 5 implications. And just to remind you, NATO's Article 5, that's their collective defense clause. If invoked, it would dramatically expand this conflict beyond its current regional scope. It could draw in allies from across the globe under a unified military response.
Indeed, the stakes are incredibly high. Germany's foreign minister specifically called for Iran to engage in direct talks with the U.S., and the EU is saying it remains ready to play a role. However, France's foreign minister warned against pushing for regime change and expressed serious concern about a devastating escalation. He called Iran's nuclear program an existential risk.
Okay, so some slightly different nuances there between the European powers.
Yes, and what's particularly noteworthy, I think, is France also stating that Israel clearly violated Article 2 of the EU-Israel Agreement on Human Rights, citing conduct in Gaza and the West Bank, with consequences apparently to be drawn up in July. And Spain's foreign minister plans to go a step further, saying he'll ask the EU to suspend the cooperation agreement with Israel and impose a weapons embargo.
Wow. So that shows Europe really grappling with how to balance its security concerns about Iran with these existing human rights commitments.
Precisely. It's a complex calculation for them.
Now, Russia, a longtime ally of Iran, has also weighed in, but with a different tone, obviously. The Kremlin expressed deep regret and condemnation of the U.S. strikes, stating they increased the number of conflict participants and ushered in a new spiral of escalation. And we should remember Russia and Iran signed that strategic partnership back in January, strengthening their ties. Russia has also publicly offered to mediate between the U.S. and Iran.
Right. And from Iran's perspective, their foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, condemned the U.S. attacks as outrageous, lawless, and criminal. He asserted Iran's right to self-defense. He also stated, quite bluntly, that the U.S. and Israel have blown up any chance of a diplomatic solution.
Strong words.
Very. Araghchi is currently on a trip to Moscow, meeting President Putin, discussing common threats and that strategic partnership. Iran clearly expects Russia to play an active role here, and perhaps most tellingly, Araghchi even hinted at pulling out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, questioning why Iran should rely on it if it is not able to protect us.
Okay, that's significant.
It really is. This intensified diplomatic push towards Russia, combined with these remarks about the NPT, it signals a potential, maybe even radical, recalibration of Iran's international alliances and obligations, all driven by these perceived threats. It just adds multiple complex layers to the existing tensions.
Meanwhile, China is focused more on the economic side of things, calling for de-escalation to prevent impact on the global economy, specifically highlighting concerns about closing the Strait of Hormuz.
A critical choke point.
Absolutely. That strait is just vital for global trade and energy, particularly for China, which is the largest oil importer and a major buyer of Iranian oil. In fact, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio specifically asked China to try and dissuade Iran from closing the strait.
Leveraging that economic connection.
Seems like it. And other nations were also carefully navigating this. Iraq warned the U.S. attacks threaten peace and stability in the Middle East. Japan, which is heavily reliant on Middle Eastern oil passing through Hormuz, is carefully calibrating its response, balancing its U.S. ties while avoiding directly backing the U.S. strikes. It's truly a global chessboard, isn't it? Every move has multiple implications.
Absolutely. And shifting back to Iran's calculated reactions and threats, well, They vowed a decisive response to the U.S. We've heard some pretty potent rhetoric from Iranian officials. Army General Hatami stated the U.S. opened the doors to the warriors of Islam for any action against its interests and army, and we will never back down.
Forceful language.
Very. And Armed Forces spokesperson Ibrahim Zulfakhari warned the U.S. should expect heavy, regretful, and unpredictable consequences. Adding directly, aimed at Trump, "Gambler Trump, you can start this war, but we will be the ones who end it."
Wow, that's direct.
Extremely. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has also vowed to punish the Zionist enemy. And there have even been these reports, communicated via a G7 intermediary, of threats to unleash sleeper cell attacks on U.S. soil.
Okay, that raises the stakes considerably.
It does, and Iranian hardliners have also been calling for attacks on U.S. bases in the region and, again, withdrawal from the NPT. So it's clearly a messaging strategy, but the big question is how much of this is strategic posturing for public and international consumption, and how much represents a direct, actionable threat?
That's the critical question, isn't it? It really sounds like they're publicly weighing a whole variety of powerful options, from direct military action to these broader strategic shifts, like the NPT discussion. That could have really long-term consequences.
Oh.
In terms of actual capabilities, Iran claims most of its highly enriched uranium at Fordo was moved before the U.S. attack, though the IAEA expresses uncertainty about the whereabouts of nuclear material, including large amounts of uranium-235 enriched to 60%. So some ambiguity there.
Right. Uncertainty is the key word from the IAEA.
Meanwhile, Israel's national security advisor claims a significant number of Iran's, 2,500 ballistic missiles could be unusable now, trapped under debris from damaged tunnel systems. That's the claim.
Another major claim, difficult to verify independently.
True. And then, of course, there's the speculation about regime change. Donald Trump hinted at the demise of Iran's leadership, asking, essentially, if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change?
Well, these claims about moving uranium and the Israeli claims about damaging missiles, they raise fundamental questions about Iran's true capabilities versus its public posturing. And when you factor in comments like Trump's hinting at regime change, it really underscores how this conflict isn't just about military strikes, it's about the very future of Iran's leadership and its nuclear ambitions. It forces both sides into this high-stakes information and military chess match. The rhetoric about regime change from one side and, ending the war from the other, it truly highlights the uncharted and, frankly, perilous territory we are observing.
But, as missiles flew and diplomats were scrambling, another critical battle was quietly unfolding at the same time. And that's the war for information itself. The Israeli government has issued new directives restricting media coverage of the conflict with Iran. Specifically, the military censors guidelines, they call it Rising Lion IDF Censor Guidelines for Media Coverage of Attack on the Israeli Home Front. This circular orders strict measures.
Okay, so tighter controls on reporting.
Yes. Journalists are now prohibited from filming or broadcasting images from impact sites, especially near military installations, or using drones or wide-angle cameras for impact areas. They can't detail precise locations near security installations. They can't broadcast images of Israeli missiles launching or Iranian missiles being intercepted.
Quite specific prohibitions.
Very. There's even a ban on sharing social media videos without prior censor review, citing concerns about enemy-generated fake news. And we've actually seen reports of photographers being arrested in Haifa for setting up cameras. This is a truly fascinating aspect of this conflict, isn't it? It illustrates how information itself becomes this critical battleground. How does such extensive control over the narrative impact our ability, or anyone's ability, to understand the full picture?
Well, it truly highlights the strategic importance of information both domestically and internationally. The legal underpinnings of Israeli censorship, they go way back to the 1945 British Mandate, requiring journalists to submit articles on security matters to the military censor. And the censor can halt publication if there's, quote, near certainty that real damage will be caused to the security of the state.
A high bar, but security can be broad.
Exactly. The censor's definition of security issues is broad. It covers military, intelligence, arms deals, even foreign affairs. And, importantly, outlets are banned from even stating if parts of an article have been censored.
So you might not even know what you're not seeing.
Precisely. And the numbers are striking. There's been an unprecedented spike since the Gaza war began. The censor fully blocked 1,635 articles and partially restricted over 6,200 in 2024 alone. That averages about 21 interventions per day. Reporters Sans Frontières, the press freedom group, places Israel at 112th out of 180 countries for press freedom. So this level of control really underscores the challenge of being well informed in such a complex environment where narratives can be heavily managed.
Yeah, absolutely. And these dynamics, I mean, from the direct attacks to the diplomatic maneuvering and this information control, they have immediate ripple effects on the global economy. The economic fallout has been swift. Oil prices surged by approximately 10% since the conflict really began, fueled by those fears that Iran could disrupt shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
The market is clearly spooked.
Definitely. Australia's stock exchange, the ASX, plummeted more than $10 billion after the initial U.S. strikes were reported. And we mentioned Japan's concerns about oil supply disruption that's particularly acute for them. Given what 75% of its crude imports pass through Hormuz,
Yeah.
they've actually moved to cap gasoline prices domestically. The immediate economic impact here is truly remarkable. It's not just about missiles. It's hitting global markets hard, showing just how interconnected everything is.
And that interconnectedness extends directly to the significant global concern about the risk of this conflict expanding. Remember, the Kremlin explicitly stated that U.S. actions increased the number of conflict participants and ushered in a new spiral of escalation.
Right.
China has also warned of a spillover of war risk. We've heard observations from former British ambassadors that Iran could disrupt oil traffic or mobilize proxies to attack U.S. interests. And CNN political analysts pointed out that Iran has warned of retaliation against U.S. forces in the region if the U.S. joins the war directly.
Which is a standing threat.
A standing threat, yes. And even the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen had previously vowed to attack American ships in the Red Sea if the U.S. joined the conflict. So the potential for this conflict to widen beyond its current parameters, drawing in more actors, affecting everything from energy markets to regional stability, it's a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of these kinds of escalations.
Okay, so just to recap briefly, we've navigated through the intense military exchanges, the really complex and varied international reactions, the specific threats and counter-threats being weighed on both sides, and this significant layer of information control that's playing out simultaneously. Understanding these nuances, these multiple perspectives, hopefully helps you, our listener, be truly well-informed and appreciate the multifaceted nature of global events like this beyond just the simple headlines.
Indeed, it's a testament to the intricate web of global politics and economics, really.
Absolutely. As we've explored this intricate web of strikes, diplomacy, and the battle for information, it truly brings into focus how swiftly a regional conflict can send tremors across the entire globe, impacting everything from oil prices to what people can actually freely know. So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this. In an era where information itself is clearly a battlefield, how does the global community, or even how do you as an individual, truly discern the full truth of a rapidly unfolding international crisis?